Hey there, clarinetophiles and filettes. In our last video, we were talking about what I think are three kind of unique fingerings for the upper clarion pitches A, B, and C. And I demonstrated, or tried to demonstrate, some of the virtues of those fingerings. They're a little more awkward to get to than the standard fingerings, but then they offer so much more, I believe, in response and control, especially at the softer dynamic level, and making the transitions from long pipe to short pipe, as well as the transitions in and out of the upper of the altissimo register into the upper clarion, that they're certainly worth the effort to learn. In this video, which will be relatively short, I hope, uncharacteristically so, what I'd like to do is to discuss a few fine points about those, but I wanted to do that after that many of you who saw the previous video had a chance to actually work with those fingerings. A few of the things you may have discovered are as follows. The first thing you may have discovered is those notes don't blow exactly the same as the standard fingerings that you're used to. They have more resistance, and they will also require, you might say, a different proportion of embouchure and air. Normally, players try to use a little more embouchure control of those upper clarion notes, especially on certain models of clarinets, and a little less air. But these require good breath support and more relaxation in the embouchure. It's better to play those notes as if you're not exactly playing high notes, but as if you're playing, say, more longer pipe clarion notes like those in the right hand. So that's one of the things that's really going to help you in playing those notes. You have to hunt them out and work on controlling them with the air. You must remember the clarinet is not a typewriter. It's not a typewriter. And the question that we ask about a given fingering is not, is it the same as the standard Rubank elementary fingering? But the question is what's it good for? What can I creatively think about? What can I creatively use this fingering for that will improve the musical result and the technical result of the music that I play? So those are very important things, and then you're finding that out, I'm sure, if you worked with these fingerings. They don't blow the same. They also don't color exactly the same, which is not a disadvantage, because on the clarinet you want many different colors and expressive colors, especially when you play these pitches at soft dynamic levels. For instance, the B and the C. Those are often found to be kind of difficult and iffy to come in and to play very softly. Well, these long pipe notes really eliminate a lot of that difficulty. So learning to play those notes, you'll find it's much easier to control them at the soft dynamic and in wide leaps. So take advantage of that. Don't complain that, oh, this high C doesn't color exactly the same as my standard fingering high C. No, take advantage of that. Think about the literature that you played, the things that are difficult in those areas, and see if you can't apply those fingerings. Now, so those are just a few things that I would suggest in working with the fingerings. And remember, you do have to work with them. They're not second nature to you. You'll have to practice them until finally they will become second nature, just like the standard fingerings. You weren't used to playing the clarinet at all at one time, and you even had to learn those standard fingerings and fumbled around with those. So don't be discouraged if you don't get these fingerings down the first or second time. They're kind of complicated digitally, and your mind's not used to working in that kind of track. So work those things out. There's one other thing that we need to talk about, and I think we'll be done with these fingerings. Now, on most brands of clarinets, and when I say most brands, I'm thinking of the popular brands, on the Yamaha, the Yamaha, the Buffet, my Lyric clarinets, clarinets in that kind of acoustical tradition or toward that acoustical tradition, These notes, I think you'll find, are extremely good, very responsive, extremely well in tune. Actually, for instance, the high C on most of those brands of clarinets is actually better than the standard high C fingering in a lot of instances. The B is also a beautifully in tune note. So those things you might discover, but then on certain models of clarinets, for instance, like on the very small bore models that Selmer makes, like the Selmer Signature, and maybe the actually the Buffet Festival, with this higher register tube placement, that you're going to find that these notes tend to be on the low side. Well, this is going to limit your use. There are some variations you can experiment around with, based on these long pipe fingerings. Some holes that you can vent that will still retain those fingerings, still retain the pitches quite well. That might improve the tuning. But that's going to be very much an individual thing. It's going to be between you, your clarinet, the acoustics of your clarinet, and the mechanics that you use. So anyway, you should know that if you're playing a Selmer Signature or maybe the Buffet Festival or some other clarinets, and you find that those upper clarion pitches that I gave you are flat on the low side, don't be discouraged. Don't think there's something wrong with you. It's probably due mostly to the acoustical realities of the brand of clarinet that you're playing. And don't be discouraged that you've got anything inferior, because you haven't. Those clarinets actually have some superior fingerings, whereas the other models that I mentioned maybe not so good. So it's a kind of give and take when you're looking at alternate fingerings on the clarinet. A lot of it has to do with your experimentation. A lot of it has to do with the way you respond and work on these things. And essentially, all I can do is present the fingerings to you, give you the best information that I know, and ask you to go out there and do exactly what I did, which is experiment until you find something that is really satisfactory and secure. It's going to improve your music making, and it's going to improve your technical security. So I think with that, we're pretty much going to be finishing up with those fingerings. We're going to continue with the fingering, with our investigation of alternate fingerings on the clarinet in a video, but not the one coming up next. The one coming up next is kind of, well, I won't say it's urgent, but some people were very concerned about how to play the high register on the clarinet, what's required to be really successful in playing the high register. And, I began to think about that, and I thought, something, I've never really presented that here, and it's such a very, very critical thing. So the next video we're going to be talking about is how to play the high register of the clarinet, what the requirements are of your equipment, and what the requirements are in terms of your own playing mechanics. In the meantime, experiment with these things. I hope this is very helpful to you. And let me know if you have any other ideas about subjects that we can investigate. The clarinet's a pretty big subject, so a lot of aspects to it, and I'm sure that a lot of you have some great questions out there. We'll be happy to investigate the best way we can. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. All the information and much, much more is contained in Tom Ridenour's book, Clarinet Fingerings, a guide for the performer and educator. Visit us on the net at www.ridenourclarinetproducts.com. As always, thanks for watching.